Alexis Morgan. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. How are you, Matt?
God bless it. I'm well. We survived the holiday. Thank God.
Did survive the holiday.
Lord, baby Jesus.
Yes, I entered with 6 family members or 5, and I came out of it with 5, and that was successful.
Dude, we actually redid the holiday in one day yesterday on Sunday because it was everybody got sick. Like there was so much drama and like genuinely sick. Like my oldest son was knocked out for like a week and a half. My wife got super sick and she just started feeling like herself again on Sunday. So we got like really good pizza and we, watched movies and hung out. The Christmas decorations were still up. Yeah. So,
oh my gosh, I love that so much for you. But also but in the most endearing way. Like I love that because it sucks when the holidays get, shit all over with sickness. Like the crappiness of sickness can totally, and to your point, like everyone in your family was sick. So it wasn't like, one little kid was there with a fever or something. It was everyone was sick, which totally sucks.
Dude, knock on wood, I'm the only one that escaped. So like on Christmas Day, when everyone's sick, I'm running around cooking all this food and doing stuff and by the way, you have to be happy. And I slept on the floor. I slept on my 11-year-old's floor all night. No mattress. I did have a blanket. I had a comforter on me.
What a good dad.
Oh my God. And then you wake up and then we're doing Christmas presents. And I literally look over at my wife as we're doing the Christmas presents. And it's one of those things where it's like, be happy now. Well, both of us, we're giving that. It's just like, and we're giving each other presents and we're just like they give me this mug every year and I so underappreciated it this year. I feel bad about it, but they every year my wife gets me, she uses Shutterfly and she uploads a bunch of pictures and they send me the coffee, thermos, not a thermos, the thing you drink out of, right? Yeah. But it's this beautiful thing with pictures all over it. And she gives me one every single year. So now I have 12 of them or 13 of them and they're terrible, by the way. Like if you flip the little, how they have a lot of coffee things have the little click down into place. So when you're and then you click it back when you want to drink. Well, if you click it all the way back, the angle out of the basin where you're drinking from is actually so shallow that as you take a drink and you put it down, you know how water climbs up foundations, it climbs up and starts dripping out. So you have to not click it all the way back. So when you take a drink that hits you in the nose, it's terrible. They're all just, it's just for a gift to have. But yeah. So anyway, we survived. Yes. The legislative session is coming up again. So Christmas 2026 comes early. January 12th, I think it starts, right?
Yeah, January 12th.
It's going to be lit. So this year, you are coming on, which I'm very, very excited about. You're going to come on and be my public policy guru. So we'll be able to talk. My hope is once or twice, not once or twice a week, every week or two, you'll come on and we'll have a collection of policies that are coming out that need some, almost Dr. Morgan, PhD, candidate background. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I really am grateful for the invitation to come on. I mean, I've watched the podcast, grow and grow and grow. And last year, 2025 was the
inaugural year.
The inaugural year, you were like, I'm going to do this thing. And these are my, these are the expectations. And I feel like you exceeded expectations. That's just from,
thank you.
I feel like you exceeded expectations. So now this year, doing a couple of different things. So being able to come on and give a perspective and, several different perspectives just from, kind of an academic and an Idahoan and, different stakeholders to understand what would this really mean for this policy to be in place, or what are some extra things that, maybe we're not seeing or thinking about. So I'm really, I'm excited about it.
Well, it's again, you brought things 2 years ago. I remember somebody brought forward a bill. I can't even remember what it was, but I just remember I was on the phone with you. You were like, he didn't ask the stakeholders. And I'm like,
I totally remember what this was.
Who are you talking about? It's and again, just introducing the idea that because I think it was the
guns in
schools bill.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think it was Representative Hill, and he brought it forward. Mm-hmm. And this was the 2024 legislative session, I think. Mm-hmm. He brought it forward, and I was like, again, I don't know anything about safety. I don't know anything about public safety. I don't know anything about public safety in schools. I didn't know anything about it. So he brought it forward. He's like, yeah, man, we should make schools places where, they're not soft targets. I'm like, that sounds great. Let's make schools that aren't soft targets. And I remember talking to you and you're like, look, here's the thing. I understand, Matt, that you like this idea that schools aren't soft targets. Has he talked to the School Boards Association to find out what school board members might think about all of the firearms that may come into play within their district, or like what policies they may be able to put in place, what policies they already have in place that might conflict. Like, and I was like, well, does he have to? And you're like, yeah, man, the school boards are in charge of the school districts and they're charged with like keeping kids safe and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I guess I hadn't thought about that. So just the idea of bringing in the stakeholders, the people that are in charge of these spaces or responsible for these spaces or might have an interest in these spaces, again, stuff that I hadn't thought about. So like, wow, why don't we like apply that kind of broader, because now we're 2 years more, you're 2 years more studying this stuff. Like, let's apply that to these broader perspectives in the legislative session.
No, yeah, I love that. And to the bill that you were just talking about, what was interesting was that even, I mean, you know, to your point, you hear an idea and you think, yeah, actually that
sounds fine.
Yeah, that sounds fine to me. Like, yeah, I love the premise and, you know, all those different things. You know, implementation is different on the other side. To pass a bill versus, you know, implementing a bill is different. But something that I think, I don't even know, I'm not going to say I know what, you know, Representative Hill understood and what he didn't. Sure. But the reality is that school boards already have that authority to do the thing that he wanted to, like, initiate on the entire state level. And so there was actually one lawmaker that stood up on the floor during the session where they were discussing the bill as lawmakers. And he said, I'm not going to vote for this bill because the school districts already have the authority to do this. But second, let me tell you my school districts that already have a policy like this in place.
I remember that. Yeah, because there were some more rural school districts that are like, look, it would take a half an hour for the sheriff to show up or for like to have an overwhelming response. We don't want a half an hour. Yeah. Yeah. So they, you know, so this bill, this state law would have trumped what they were doing and it wouldn't have been good for them. And so it was just super fascinating. And one of the things that was really cool and that I really appreciate about Representative Hill, I mean, he came on my show and he and I spoke about his Flags in Schools bill, and we really kind of pulled it apart from a public policy agenda setting and passing and implementation lens, not an ideology lens, which I really appreciated him doing. Because not all lawmakers are willing to have that conversation, and so we were talking about it. But he is a lawmaker that's willing to just talk to people about stuff, and he and I don't agree on some things, and that's okay. Sure.
And the thing that I like about it is that he is a lawmaker from my perspective that he has strong convictions, and also it doesn't feel like some people when they have strong convictions, I just feel like they're so kind of like pushy or aggressive about it. And that's something that I really appreciate about Representative Hill and some other lawmakers too, that they're just willing, like, hey, let's just have a conversation about this, right? It doesn't have to be like so aggressive and we don't have to agree. And Representative Hill, he and I think it might have been, well, it was some point during his process of the bill, I sat down with him in his office and we had a really lengthy conversation. And what was so great about it was that conversation helped me understand where he was coming from, why this bill was important to him, and why he wanted to work to pass it. And he gave me an opportunity to share with him what my perspective was as a parent. At the time I was the state PTA president. And when all was said and done, I remember looking at him and saying, like, thanks so much for sharing this with me. We disagree with this bill and actually we're going to come out and oppose it. And he said, okay, like, you know, appreciate the candor here. And it was super respectful. And, so anyways, and the bill didn't end up going anywhere. And then I was just recently talking to Representative Hill and he was kind of saying, you're like, no, I'm not going to be focusing on that this year. I'm going to be focusing on some other things. I'm realizing, you know, some funding things for this, that, or whatever. And so, just really appreciate that lens in that way. But being able to talk and share about it is really, there's just a lot of value in that. Yeah,
that interaction, right? That's a really big piece. Again, that I think is really the whole public policy and politics. Again, I'm not in politics. I'm just like standing adjacent to it now.
Well, I mean, you know.
Listen, I have no control over anything. I'm not in politics. But, just experiencing the study of it and understanding from your views, like, this is how good policy is made. This is how bad policy is made. This is when you're a good representative or a good senator and you interact or interface or communicate, that's good. If you refuse, like if you're trying to pass a bill that is going to upset a lot of people and you didn't talk to those people beforehand and you refuse to talk to them as you're going through the process, that's bad, right? Like there are these clear things. You're like, okay, right. So that's, again, these are things that are very interesting to me to understand the ins and the outs of, because how else am I going to come to terms with understanding, I can understand the policies from what I think would be cool, but it's not going to necessarily be, hey, this is good legislation because you think it's cool, right? And if we believe in the legislative process, then you're going to have to believe in understanding stakeholders. You're going to have to believe in educating. What do you think about lobbyists, by the way?
Oh, geez.
This is a really for the last forever, since I understood what the concept of a lobbyist is, everyone's like, lobbyists are bad. Lobbyists are these paid thugs that they go in and do this stuff, right? They convince lawmakers to do X, Y, or Z, right? I'm like, oh, that's bad, because then like whoever has the most money. But I've also come to terms with like, okay, but things are really complex, and having somebody that understands the nuances or implications within an industry. Here's one for you. There was an outhouse bill, or not an outhouse like porta potty, but like outbuilding bill last legislative session. There was a bill coming to the front that was saying, hey man, we can't just have people building any buildings on their properties, because you had people that were moving into like, let's say 1 acre lot, and then they'd build like some gigantic barn, or they'd build some gigantic thing. They're like, without getting permits or without getting inspections or things like that. People were like, okay, that's not great. Like, you can't build a 1,500 square foot, outbuilding without any inspection or planning, or especially in like a more, urban area. And the Farm Bureau came forward. They're like, hang on, man, hang on. Okay, understand what you're saying. But if this bill in the way it's written goes through, we in the agricultural world build buildings out in the middle of nowhere all the time for perhaps grain storage, hay storage. We have buildings that we build, or even carports for equipment storage, like all of these things. And if we had to go through a planning and zoning process for each of these things, this would be catastrophic to just our operation, right? To understand that, you have to have somebody who's like, hey, look, it's like, Brian, you know me, right? Like, listen, I'm telling you, this is bad for farmers and ag people because of this reason. So like, hang on. Yeah. So there's value for the Farm Bureau to have a lobbyist who is known, who is trusted, who can bring this perspective. And it's like, if you want to stop the person from building the 1,500 square foot barn with no oversight in an urbanized area, I'm with you on this. But can we make a carve out for like agricultural, commercial industry and behavior? Like, so what, like, how do we get around this where we don't want just like a bunch of hired thugs manipulating lawmakers, but also have established people that have rapport and are trusted within the capital of Idaho?
No, I think it's a fair question. I don't know all of the ins and outs of lobbyists, and you're air quoting here. What's interesting to me is that there are people within associations that are classified as lobbyists, but are more of a, I think of my friend Quinn Perry, who is the, her official title is, I always
Government Affairs for ISBA.
Yeah, but she's also like the deputy chief.
Gotcha.
So government affairs, but what that means, so for her association, the Idaho School Boards Association has gathered all of this information from their school boards. They've members, they have voted on different resolutions and priorities for her to focus on. So then, as the legislative session unfolds, if there are 10 priorities, those are the 10 things that she's paying attention to. And then she's going to make sure that all the lawmakers understand what that would mean for school boards or for schools around the state of Idaho. So from my perspective, that is a really important role in our political process. Right. And you described that for the Farm Bureau, right?
Sure.
Well, technically, Quinn is classified as a lobbyist underneath some other thing, I think with the Secretary of State or something. And I could be wrong on this one, but I had an experience with the classification of lobbyist. I don't know if it was last session. Now I can't remember if it was 24 or 25. I feel like it was 24, but I could be wrong.
I think it was 24. We would have talked about it in 25.
Yeah. So I go and I'm asked as the state PTA president. I'm a volunteer. At that time, we have no paid employees. And I go and I speak on behalf of parents regarding a technology bill. And it was interesting. It was a bill from Senator Cook. And he didn't ask me to come, but I had heard about it. And so I showed up. And you sign in when if you want to speak, you have to sign in the committee room, right? So I get called, I speak, I go, I get my 2 minutes, I speak my stuff and I sit down and then I leave, right? Because I'm a mom, I'm a volunteer and I'm not getting paid for this. Well, what was interesting was this was a tech bill and there were a lot of technology companies that I describe as like descending upon Idaho because they were all remote testimonies. I think almost all of them were remote testimony for the tech companies that were going to be impacted by this bill. And then I go, I move on from my business, I like move on for the rest, go into the rest of my day. Well, I think a couple of days later or within a week, I get notified from my friend who does work at the Capitol that, that I've been flagged. The Idaho PTA has been flagged. And I went, what? And she, was just hey, someone came in and said, hey, does anyone know Idaho PTA or Alexis Morgan? And my friend said, oh, yeah, like I totally know her. And she said, well, she's been flagged by, I'm pretty sure it was the Secretary of State's office. And they're probably going to get fined because she is not the Idaho
registered lobbyist.
She's not a registered lobbyist. So my friend calls me and gives me the scenario. And my response is, I'm not a lobbyist. And she said, yes, I know that, but you've been flagged. I'm not a lobbyist. Like, okay. And so, right. And she just said, well, go, call the Secretary of State's office and then look up on their website how a lobbyist is defined. And so I call the Secretary of State's office. I talk to someone and I give him the scenario. And it was really funny because he said, how did you find out about this? Like, it was like
you don't have to worry about it, Sparky.
Yeah, I'm not telling you, it was right. It was like a 24-hour turnaround almost. And I asked, well, who flagged me? I want to know who flagged me. And he said, I can't tell you that. And I thought, that's something I'm not like a super fan of. And then, so he wouldn't tell me. But I said, okay, based on how I'm reading this, I am not a lobbyist. But if the Idaho PTA was, then we would have to register and we would have to report, X amount of times during the year. And I told him, I said, that's a major burden for us just in terms of the fact that we don't have paid employees. And that was the deciding difference in the, am I going to register or am I not? Because at the time we didn't have paid employees. Like I was just a volunteer. So it was a really interesting experience to learn about lobbying, about lobbyists. And at that time I wasn't aware of definitions and all sorts of things and having to register. So but then on the flip side, I mean, there's this TV show that's, been off air for years. It's called Madam Secretary. Did you ever see that?
No.
Oh, no. Love the show. It was really cool. And she worked at she was the main, Secretary of State. Main gal on the federal level. But I would see people come in sometimes and often they would, it was a TV show and there would be lobbyists there and they were often from like marijuana places or something
sure.
Right. And they were always trying, they were pushing this particular agenda. And the thing that was interesting to me was that if I were to like visually compare Quinn with the
marijuana lobbyist people,
I'm like, I love Quinn.
Sure.
But I love the position. I totally agree with that, that legislative arm of an organization. And then I look at like this paid lobbyist who is doing his job, right, for some organization. Yeah. But it's also like, well, I like as Alexis Morgan, I would have a hard time taking a position like that because I would feel like I was just pushing an agenda.
Sure.
And does that agenda really benefit X amount of people, and am I going to be able to use my own integrity and making these decisions and stuff? Right. That would be hard for me. And so, like, to your question of,
do we like lobbyists or not?
Do we like lobbyists or not? I think for me, it really goes back to like a premise of integrity and, engaging in a process where we're doing it in a way that like, benefits the system, not pumping in money and, really pushing an agenda that is for a very specific small amount of people. And I think it's just, for me, what I guess I'm saying is that it's just very layered, and it's not straightforward. And it really kind of, I think it depends more on what's happening in the, process and system and stuff. I don't know if that's a very good answer.
No, I think it's great. And because there is no right answer. You know what else I've learned recently? I've had the good fortune of being educated in the election space and going across the country. In fact, I recently got back from DC for an election conference. And again, I don't administer elections. For my part, I show up, I'm like, I know Instagram, right? And what's interesting is that's very relevant to election people, because most people have never had a bad experience with election. Most people that distrust elections because of things they've seen on social media, at least in our contemporary iteration, right? It used to be, like maybe you saw something on the news, doesn't matter. Or maybe a candidate would put out an article saying, like, in the newspaper saying, like, hey, this election was stolen. Now people are worried about the election system in Georgia, right? Where it's like, what do you know about the election system in Georgia? Like, well, they were all rigged, right? And again, they're saying they're all rigged because of things coming off of social media. But again, I see the complexity of the systems we have in place. Like, I've done at least a dozen interviews with our Secretary of State, and I still, to this day, I'm like, okay, hang on. Okay, so let me get this right, because the system's so dang complex, so that you and I can walk in, show a little ID, we get a ballot, we walk out, to make sure that is counted perfectly accurately, and that, you and I were the only people, like all of these things, checks and balances. My point is, I've been trying to understand the election system for over 2 years now, to realize that the lawmakers come in, they may only have like a 2-year term, right? And that might be it. For them to get up to speed and educated on just elections, when maybe their constituents didn't even care about elections. Maybe their constituents were the outbuilding people. They're like, we care about these outbuildings. So this person goes in and starts, the lawmaker goes and learns everything they can about things in the ag world. And it's like, okay, but did you cover forestry? Did you get to the election system? Like, what about the law enforcement agent? The law enforcement guy's over there, he really wants to talk to you about this bill with enhanced sentencing if you attack a law enforcement agent. And the person's like, oh my God, like, I can't even track these things. So it's, again, you have to have this pooled knowledge base. You have to have this aggregated knowledge base that doesn't change, that keeps its eye on the prize every single legislative session, whatever that priority is. And you're not going to get that person for free. You're not going to have free act. Like, yeah, maybe, man, like, you're retired. I know a guy right now, retired law enforcement, was in law enforcement for like 30 years. He has a pension, and yeah, he represents some interests for a law enforcement group in Idaho. Okay, great. I don't know if he gets a salary. He probably should, because he works his butt off. But it's like, okay, how many of those people are you going to have? How many PTA people do you have like that? How many, fish and game people do you have like that? Like, we have too many things and too much knowledge, and it's too high stakes to leave it just to volunteers. But then if someone from Pharma shows up in Idaho, I want to burn the whole place down. Like, get out of here, you crazy. Like, or somebody, just like, people show up that aren't Idahoans, that aren't like, hey man, I talked to my farmer in Parma and he has an outbuilding that he's trying to build. And now the Parma planning and zoning is getting after him, and he's just trying to cover his hay for the winter. It's like, I like that guy, but somebody showing up from Google saying how we shouldn't, put constraints on the Chromebooks that they're giving our 12-year-olds. I'm like, I want things to happen that I'm not going to stay right now. But like, that's, so it's kind of like, categorically, it's like, it's hard to make a determination either way.
It's hard. It's nuanced.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nuanced for sure.
And it's so complex.
It is so complex. And now I want to understand it a little bit more, but sometimes, I mean, to your point, one of the things that you were saying was about sometimes, these people with deep pockets are coming in and paying a lot, or gobs of people, and that money is coming, and there is corruption. I mean, there is corruption.
Sure.
And it happens. And
I want a trip to Cabo. I'll vote however you want.
I know. These types of things are happening. It's interesting. This is not the same thing, but it was, now college sports and football. Organizations can pay the football players now, right?
That name, image, likeness, NIL.
Yeah, they can pay those football players. Well, the reality is that this was happening before this was legal. And we were watching this one football team play or something, and in the house someone was saying something, and it was like, oh yeah, this football team, they've been really good for a long time. And an older adult said, well, yeah, that's because they've been, giving those players money in some various form for years. And so the reality is that also happens in our political system. People know it, and that happens through lobbying and all sorts of different things. And so I think if there's a way to, and this is where laws come in, or we have to, pull some things out, if there's some ways that we can improve the system, not if, there are ways that we can improve the system to make it so that there's less corruption and less opportunity for people to either get corrupt or, be corrupted or, do illegal things or something. I'm all for it. And we do have, and I think in part because you and I have we've had an opportunity to interact with some of our, public administrators and some of our, lawmakers. I really do feel like we do have some people that live with an immense amount of integrity. Whether I agree with every decision or not is actually irrelevant to me. If I can find someone who has so much integrity in the way that they live and the way that they operate inside, in their job, I really appreciate that. We have some of those people in Idaho. And I really appreciate the way in which they function. I mean, right now, he's on the federal level. Alex Adams, at the state level he was the director of the Department of Health and Welfare.
Yep.
I had some interactions with him, and I was actually really impressed.
Yes. With
the amount of, knowledge and integrity and the way I got to interact with him in a couple of different venues.
Yeah.
And I could tell based on my interactions with him that I thought, I don't agree with all the policies that he's got going on here. That's normal. But I really appreciate the way in which he operates.
Right.
And we need more people like that in my mind in the system. That's,
Listen, very much agree. We all get to disagree. But again, I think what you're coming back to is good faith, right? Like, do you have are you communicating your position in good faith, or are you communicating it because somebody sent you to Cabo to do it? I'd love a trip to Cabo. Shout out, somebody want to send me to Cabo. I'm not a lawmaker. I'm a nobody, but I love Cabo. I'm a big fan. I'm Mexican. So when I go down there, no joke, it could be midsummer, sun beating down, everything in my physical body's like, this is right. My skin all of a sudden feels so good. My wife is Irish, and she literally, every fiber of her being's like, this is wrong. She gets heat rash and stuff. And I'm like, my knees feel great. I'm like, this is just so great here. I'm like, never felt better. Had a small thing that I wanted to talk about as the legislative session starts. Do not be surprised when the first week of the leg session starts and it's a dumpster fire, like nuclear bombs left and right. I remember this happened last year, obviously 2025. But what I found out actually towards the end, after I was like, what has happened here, is this one guy sat me down and he's like, listen, man, this is how it works. He's like, and he essentially outlined, he's like, bills get thrown out there. I spoke with Dr. Jackie Kettler about this. It was like bills get thrown out for 10 reasons. Mm-hmm. Only one of them is that people want them to pass. Bills get thrown out as philosophical things. Bills get thrown out to test the water. Bills get thrown out to make the news. Bills get thrown out to play cover for somebody else. Let's throw out something that's super upsetting and then pass this thing over here when nobody's watching. Mm-hmm. He's like, so a lot of times when people are getting super worked up, the people bringing forth the emotionally traumatizing piece, they don't even actually care about it. What they care about is 2 iterations down the line that they'll hopefully pass in March, right? But again, he said, which I couldn't disagree with him along. He's like, listen, if either side comes forward and they want this, and they say, hey guys, can I just get this? The other side's going to beat them up. And they're not going to get this. There's so they got to start all the way out here, and the other person starts all the way out here, and then they beat each other up, and finally they get this at the end. But it starts with this unreasonable, irrational, crazy all the way over here. And God, man, people need to realize that. Don't get like the first week, I guarantee you, it is going to start fast and furious, especially in the primary session. So you're going to have more people running bills that are designed to get notoriety because they want to be reelected. This is going to happen. Just maybe don't even start looking until week 3.
Well, and there are some things, I mean, to your point, they're going to be throwing out bills. Some lawmakers are going to be throwing out bills in which, one, it could never pass, or two, they want to be able to say something like, oh, I worked on this bill, or I worked on this topic. And it's not, maybe something like that already actually exists. But they want people to know that this is, they're working on stuff. And so it's really interesting to that point about kind of some things that are almost like fabricated for the story or for their notoriety.
Did you see I don't even think it got an RS last year. Did you see
routing slip? That's
yes. Right. So yeah, to be clear, so somebody has an idea for a bill. They work with the legislative office, service office, LSO. They get the bill made, right? And then they bring it to a committee. And the committee hears on the premise of the bill, whatever it is. And if they don't like it, they're like, you're gone and it's dead. Or they say, okay, we like this. Let's give it an RS, a routing slip. That officially enters it into like the Idaho legislative body, history, right? It's like blockchain. It's like, boom, it existed, right? And then it goes before the committee for full consideration, where the committee actually votes, should we pass this on to the main body? So if you were in the House of Representatives, let's say it's an education thing, the education committee would first have to agree to give it an RS, a routing slip, and hear it. Then you have a full hearing in the committee. The committee then would have to agree, okay, we like this or we don't. If they do like it, it moves on to the full House, where then everybody votes on it. If they don't like it, it dies then, right? Anyway, point is that there was this bill. It didn't even get an RS, but it was that it's a horrific bill. It was a horrific situation to consider, that if you're pregnant at home and you have a miscarriage at home, you would have to bring fetal tissue into a hospital so they could agree and determine that this was not an at-home abortion, but it was in fact a miscarriage. So you would have to get a Ziploc bag after you've just miscarried in your living room and present this to a hospital so that you're not accused of aborting your baby. So now look, it didn't even get an RS. It's kind of shocking even to portray. Like I said, but if you're somebody who's working in an area where I think this will, I will present this to my constituents as me trying to prevent babies from getting aborted. I'm going to present this as me trying to, make sure that people don't do these things. I'm defending women and I'm defending children. I know that's largely the kind of vernacular that I hear people talking.
Sound bites, total sound bites.
Little sound bites. And you throw this out there. I heard about this. And I asked somebody from the medical community, I'm like, would you like to come and do a show on this? This seems I don't know anything about it, but this seems kind of extreme. They're like, it's not even going to make it into committee. This is just something that lawmakers throw out. They put out these crazy things. They're designed to make headlines, which it did. It made the news, and the committee's not going to give it an RS. So we don't even worry about it until it makes out of committee. And I was like, God, man, here people get so upset about these things, and people are just using this process to get, content for re-election, apparently.
Yeah.
Pretty wild, huh?
It is pretty
that took a dark turn.
But I did want to ask you, what types of things can, for the podcast, for the show, what's happening, what's coming up for the show?
I never know what's around the corner. What I do know is there are a couple really important things. One, we'll go top down. From a national level, I've had a lot of interviews now with our 4 national guys, and they are starting to warm up to the idea of doing live town halls, which will be lit. Okay, so literally it'll be something where we're in this studio. I have maybe you on the sidelines, but we're live streaming on YouTube, on Instagram, wherever it is. Doesn't matter to me, but we're essentially live, and people can call in with questions. They can email with questions. You could email ahead of time, but we have this more interactive across the state where the lawmakers can take calls from people. They can take questions from people, but it's not the dumpster fire of public forums. Now, again, whether or not they should be obligated to do public forums, I have no idea. I don't understand about that. I know some people, fall on the sword and they're like, forget it. I'll do it until it implodes. And fine. But we've also had experiences, lately it's on both sides. There are more obstructionist individuals where they show up. They're like, I don't like this guy. I'm going to do anything to make sure that this town hall just implodes. And people have, in response, just stop doing town halls. So that's one thing that's going to potentially come to fruition in 26, which would be wild. It would be great.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
The other thing is, I think this year, covering the legislative session last year for the first time, I think this year, now that people know me, and there's not a single, I did like 450 episodes last year. There's not a single person you could ever find that was like, Matt lacked integrity or Matt changed something. I didn't change anything. I didn't modify anyone. I didn't harpoon or sabotage anyone. I didn't tell somebody we're going to talk about this and then we don't talk about it. We talk about something else. None of that happened. So there, from a familiarity standpoint at this stage, there's a lot more familiarity, and I'm excited to see, how it gets utilized and what information we can bring to Idaho on both sides, right? Like I had Ron Nate, the president of IFF, in recently. I have Lauren Nekachea, the head of the Democratic Party, coming in. I think it's like tomorrow or the next day. So it's like, we're going to have all these really cool episodes about all of the things going on. And, yeah, I don't know. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, I always find it so fascinating, and I love it for the show, in that there's some people who show up and they're really intense and they have their views, and then you come and you're really intense and like it's a really intense conversation, and the person, a man or woman, walks out and is like, yo, see you next time.
Sounds good, buddy.
So it's just the premise of, you've got integrity, you're showing up. The purpose is to get information to understand, like, what is your perspective? And I'm going to ask some questions, and I'm not here to poke holes in it. I'm here to understand, and
in good faith. I'm
faith.
asking questions in good faith because I don't understand. And most people don't understand the concepts, right?
Right.
So like, I think what you're describing most of the time is me just trying to get an answer. I don't understand. Can you just help me? And they're like, well, that's because you're this and you're that, or that's because you think this. Is like, no, none of that. I just literally don't understand. I'm sorry, I'm an idiot. Like, you're going to have to walk with me through this, but yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing.
Yeah. And then just in terms of, like, you've got your nonprofit and you've been participating in different, like grant work and stuff. I mean, are there any type of projects that you want to talk about or share, or I don't know, like, I don't know.
I think there's a desire for this type of thing in Idaho that's growing. That's what I'm most excited about. There's also a desire. Everybody that comes on knows they don't have control over the content. They don't have control of the platform. You can't buy, cheat, steal your way on. It's invite only. And that's it, right? Like, I was approached by a international company recently that you would know instantaneously for a myriad of products that wanted to offer me essentially money to like, and I declined. I'm like, I'm not interested for a myriad of reasons. One, I don't really mess around with like international things that, like, I talk to people about like trade deals with dairy or like wheat or something. Right. Fine. But like, if you're an international company and you just want to like make an impact in Idaho, I don't really care. That has nothing to do with me. Right. So, for me, I think it's great because people are realizing, they're like, okay, look, this really is what it was presented to be, which is somebody who's interested in Idaho, interested in what's going on in Idaho, interested about these different fields within Idaho. And that's it. And we can participate in this, but our participation does not prevent him. And we'll actually likely, like, somebody comes in and is really bullish about one bill. I guarantee you the next day, the person who's against it is going to come in and be like, that's a terrible idea for reason X, Y, or Z. And that's it. And I think there's an acceptance of that. Like, that's what I'm most excited about. Nobody that is a regular is like, can you please just stop talking to this person? It's like the people that are regulars are like, I know you're going to have the other person on, and thank you for having me on too.
Yeah.
You know, so that's I think what I'm most excited about.
Yeah. And then I do want to ask another question, and you can say no, you don't want to talk about it. But you and I were kind of talking recently about this premise of things happen in other states, and then there's this automatic assumption that is going on in Idaho. And you posted this thing on social media, and I thought, yeah, no, I mean, like, great point. And then there was some, you know, not everyone loves everything that everyone's posting on social media. And it was just really interesting to me. But that premise of people get all hot about what's going on in another state. Okay, fine. Get hot about what's going on in another state. But then it's so interesting to me that the next step they take is, that's happening here in Idaho. When in reality, there's no evidence to show that that's happening here in Idaho. But then all of a sudden, they're mad and they want answers, and it builds and builds and builds, and you're like, what makes you think that's actually happening here in Idaho?
They don't even want answers. They determine guilt just by the possibility. Like, does anyone in Idaho remember that Alex Adams, the gentleman in the federal government that has now frozen the grant funds to Minnesota for their child care system, that guy, he was in charge of Idaho's child care system. He was the guy checking and balancing everything here. And then he got pulled up to the federal government, and he's the one spearheading the problems in Minnesota. And it's like, the second he did that, the second the Nick Shirley stuff came out in Minnesota, people are like, well, Idaho must have daycare problems too. It's like, it's the same dude. He was pulled up to the federal government because of his work here in Idaho. But no one cares. No one cares. And what's worse is that it's not people asking for an investigate, audit, whatever you want. First off, I'm all for that. Who wants to pay in taxes when we're being defrauded? No one. No one wants to do that. Me least of all. I'm self-employed. I pay self-employment tax on top of everything else. Like, I know, get after it. But what's wild is that people in asking for an investigation also say, I can't believe we have been betrayed. I can't believe these people, like, they have failed us. It's like, wait, you don't actually want an investigation, because an investigation means there's a possibility that things are fine. There's a possibility that things aren't fine. Let's figure it out. The same people calling for investigations are the same ones accusing everybody with no evidence that they are guilty. It's like, holy cow. Yeah. So I've seen this play out with elections, right? Mm-hmm. There must be mass fraud in elections, and that must be happening here in Idaho. Now, mind you, those people are predominantly more conservative people, more likely to have voted for Trump. And guess what happened in Idaho in 2020 and 2024? Idaho went for Trump. So if we have mass election fraud, it's fraudulent against who? Like who? Where are the people getting elected that shouldn't be getting elected? Okay, so that's one that happened. You have it with mass illegal immigration, right? You have people anxious about what's going on in Texas, and they're like, that must be happening here. We need to strengthen our borders. It's like, where? Like, I actually talked to Sheriff Clifford, Ada County Sheriff. I was like, he did a presentation like, we have no evidence of mass import, like zero evidence of this. Right. And everybody, you know, most people are, in a sense, are like, well, that's just ridiculous. It's like, based on what information? I understand what you see on social media down in Texas. Where do you see that here? The only thing that anybody ever presented was that guy Theo Wold, who he put onto Instagrams like 3 busloads of illegal immigrants just got dropped off Fairview and 5 Mile. Sheriff Clifford sent out ICE. He sent out ICE. ICE goes out and they're like, hey guys, what's going on? They're like, oh, we're H2A or H1A, the ag workers.
H1B?
No, that's business.
Oh, okay.
It's like H2A or H1A. The one or it's the A, it's agriculture. They're going to Oregon. So if you're an employer that engages in that program, you have to transport people from their country of origin so they're like, let's say they're coming from Mexico. Okay, they're driving through Idaho. To Oregon, and they stopped to get some dinner and were stretching their legs. Zero evidence of illegal immigrants. So you have that. Now the daycare. Now it must be that we're being defrauded in daycare because it happened in Minnesota or Minneapolis. I don't know, wherever. The MN.
Yeah, Minnesota. Yeah.
Right, there you go. Minnesota. And it's like, guys, I'm all for this, but we live in Idaho because Idaho's awesome. And I think Idaho's different. And I think it's run different. It has different systems. It has a different culture, different people. I came here for this, but then to assume that we are not, like, we must encapsulate and embody the worst aspects of other states while also saying, like, we're the best state to live in. It's like, pick one. Can we just pick one?
Well, and what I kind of saw play out a little bit, and we have kind of talked about, is this, during whatever amount of time, a lot of people wanted to come to Idaho. They love the outdoors. They love the community, all the things. And it was different than what they were experiencing in their other home state.
Right.
So they moved to Idaho because they know or have heard, or it's different.
Right.
It's different.
It's different.
And then they get here and it's as if they have some PTSD from back wherever they came from. And instead of thinking like a scientist and saying, okay, I saw that over there. Now, could we have an investigation? Or maybe I, as an individual, could gather a little bit of information. Maybe I should go gather some information. And then based on the information I find and gather, then I'm going to make a decision on that. But that's not what has happened in some of these scenarios. And in a lot of these scenarios, what people are doing is they already have a viewpoint. They already distrust or think one way or the other. And so then what they do is they have this opinion and then they just gather information to support that opinion. There's two different ways of doing it. And the way of saying, I'm curious about this thing, let me gather information first and then make a determination based on the information I've gathered versus I have an opinion and then I'm going to pull in things to support my opinion. There are two very different ways of doing it. And if we have so many people who, particularly on social media, are going, I already distrust and I've moved here because it was better and because I heard it was better and because I've actually experienced better, but I have this distrust. And so I'm going to, what is happening over there is definitely happening over here. That's just such an unproductive way of looking at it, of doing it.
Couldn't agree more. Like the liberal Californians move into Idaho, ruining Idaho. Everyone says they bring their viewpoints. I have heard zero people advocating for liberal policies in California. You know what you have? You have Californians who say we should limit government. There's too much government. And they see that in California because there's too much government in California. And they're like, okay, that's stuck in my head. Too much government. And then I moved to Idaho and that idea in my head, it's still there. Too much government. Did you look around at the government in Idaho? Did you look around at the budget in Idaho? No, you just get your yard sign saying there's too much government. The policies that ex-Californians are advocating for that are screwing up Idaho are not things that are liberal. They're reasons that people moved here. Keep the government out of my life. Yeah, man, that's why you moved here, because the government's not really, there's too much government. Yeah, man, you moved here because there's like more limited government. Like, have you reassessed the situation? Have you acclimated to what Idaho is? And then take a step back and say like, okay, the thought I have in my head, is that still relevant? Do I still think this? Do I have examples here of problems that I think are relevant? Are these one-offs? Are these systemics? What is it? No. The people moving here that are losing their minds are bringing anxieties they had from other states and then abusing the Idaho system, be like, you're too much government. We're spending too much. It's like, have you looked at the budget? Like, I understand back when you lived in San Diego, they spent a lot of money. Like, I'm not even telling you you're wrong, but like, did you look at your county? Have you talked to your county commissioners? Have you talked to your city council? Have you assessed this budget? Or is it, hey man, they spend too much there. We must be spending too much here. There was overbearing government there. There must be overbearing government here. There's that daycare fraud there. There must be daycare fraud here. It's like, can you get a grip?
Yeah.
Sorry, I had a long weekend.
No, it's so true. And I mean, listen, there are bad actors everywhere, like in companies and in our neighborhoods. Yeah. And there's also amazing actors in companies, in our neighborhoods, in government. They're wonderful people. And in some measure, it's what are you looking for? Are you looking for, or do you have a negative perspective and you're thinking it's always just going to be negative everywhere you look? Or are you looking at it pragmatically? Like, oh, it could be, you know, or are you looking at it from a positive viewpoint? Like, oh, there's some good stuff here and I'm going to find that good stuff and I'm going to weed out the things, you know, that are no good. And yeah, there are a lot of things. I mean, as an advocate for, you know, Idaho kids over the years, I have said, listen, I love our public schools. I believe in the premise and the ideology and all the things surrounding our public community. I mean, our communities and our school communities. That doesn't mean there are major room for improvement.
Sure.
I know that. I'd love to come, you know, invite me to the table, invite other people to the table. Let's make it better. But you know, so that exists. And I look at some of our lawmakers and I think, oh, some of them are terrible. And some of them are good, like mediocre. And some of them are amazing. And I just want to say that, I mean, yeah, Alex Adams, the Department of Health and Welfare guy, you know, I think that I got to interact with him in a couple of different ways. And I was really impressed with with the way that he does business and his integrity. I really appreciated all those things. So much so that when he got pulled to the federal government, I thought, damn it.
Man, we lost. No shade on our current director, and hopefully she'll be coming in for a show soon.
Yeah,
so, yeah, great.
But just the premise of, you know, that was a really that was someone in Idaho that was doing some really great things, you know, and like awesome that he was acknowledged and he gets to go, you know, share his talents in another place. Superintendent Debbie Critchfield, I was so impressed in regards to some stuff that happened in December with the community school grant. I had a show about it, and the federal government, Idaho already had the grant in place and it was applied for by the United Way of Treasure Valley. And in December, it was a 5-year grant. It had only been for a year and a half. And in December, the federal government said, we are closing up this grant. You're not going to have access to it anymore on December 31st. And it was a what? And all these advocates came to the table. Our Idaho lawmakers, our national lawmakers went in. Debbie Critchfield went in and said, no, don't deny this. The United Way Treasure Valley submitted appeal and the feds denied it. They rejected the appeal. And it was because of Debbie Critchfield, who did a little bit of sleuthing right before, you know, right after it was denied. Right. She did some sleuthing. And what she found was the United Way of Treasure Valley, this grant had been approved during the Biden administration. And everyone knows that different administrations have different priorities.
Right.
So approved it. And then the Trump administration comes in and we know that they have different priorities. And so the United Way of Treasure Valley said, we're going to make some amendments to this grant. And they did that. They went through the process. They were proactive, and to
make sure it's still qualified. The whole thing to make sure it's still qualified. And what Superintendent Critchfield found was that adjustment to the amendment had gotten lost, and she found it and brought it forward. And on December 31st, when the grant was going to, when the Fed said, "Oh, this is wrapping up now," they reinstated it. And so now we have it for 3.5 more years. And it's because we have a lawmaker who believes in the community school, idea, the strategy. It's really helping a lot of communities in Idaho. And she went to bat. And she's a gangster.
Yes.
She's like Debbie Critchfield, Superintendent Critchfield, saved that for the state of Idaho. And she did it by mucking through the mud with the federal government and their inability to correctly file things when Idaho was following directions. Man. And it's because she went to bat for us.
Right. And listen, there are other things going on the federal level. Employees have been dismissed. The Department of Education is super, super small. And so there's only so many employees to navigate file. So there are probably a lot of reasons that you and I don't know for why that paper got lost. So we're not going there. For me, it's just listen, we have an ed leader that went to bat for Idaho kids and for Idaho. And we're fortunate for that.
God bless him.
Yeah.
Alexis Morgan, listen, the legislative session's starting. We're going to be doing a lot more of these. Anything you want to say here at the end?
No, I just really appreciate being a part of the process, and I really appreciate your new stickers on the microphone. I think it's awesome. I love all the swag. It's great.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time, and I'm super excited. You as a PhD candidate, I think it's so like I'm not a PhD candidate, but if I was, I would love to, engage in this type of thing. So I'm super cool I'm super excited that you said yes, because I want your expertise, but I also think it's awesome. Like, I don't know. It seemed like it was like, this has got to be a good idea. This like fits in with what she's studying and you agreed to it. And like, yeah, man, I'm just super pumped. Right?
Yeah. I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Don't say that. It's weird. I'm happy that you're coming on. Like, it's going to be awesome.
No, I am grateful for the opportunity. I really believe in what you're doing. I've been a big supporter the entire time. And, I'm doing my thing and I love doing my thing. And I love my podcast, The Purple Zone. It's awesome. I am the Idaho lady on Instagram, and I do a couple of different things.
Yeah.
And so I do some research. And so, yeah, I am grateful to be able to, come on. It's going to be joyful.
It's going to be joyful. This is what I'm trying to say. I'll leave you with this. A lot of times I come up with ideas that I think are great, and you tell me they're dumb. But when I presented this one, you were like, that's a great idea. I was like, # nailed it. God bless it. Thanks for coming on. We'll do it again.